Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you a little bit about how to properly agitate film once chemical has been put into the film tanks for processing. For this demonstration I'm not actually going to use chemical, that's going to come later. This is just about how to agitate the film. I have here 5 different tanks. These represent each type of film tank I have. I'm going to go through them and explain a little bit about them. These 3 take 2 rolls. This 4th one also takes 2 rolls. This only takes 1. I'm going to start with this one. It's called a GAF tank, G-A-F. That's the name of the company that makes it. The lid slides off, and inside you can see it has 1 roll, currently set up for 120. By squeezing it, I can set it up for 35mm or 126, so no one really shoots that anymore. It hasn't been made in 20 years almost. 127. 127 is still made by a company called Photochemica in Europe somewhere. They make a brand called F-Key. It's extremely nice film. If you have a chance to shoot 127, that's the film to get. And then by expanding it again, I can set it up for 120. The thing that I don't care for about the GAF system, at least on the tanks I have, I got a number of these off the internet for about $2 a piece. They leak. So if I agitate them like this, I get chemical all over my hands. It empties out. The film doesn't develop properly. So in order to use these, I have to put wax paper on top of these in the dark to keep them from leaking. So I don't use them very often, only for 127. So there's got to be some right way to do it. I just don't know how. I'm going to set this over here. This next one, these are very nice tanks. They are completely sealed. They don't leak at all. They have a thermometer inside of them, which you might be able to see. So I know what temperature the chemical that's been poured into the tank is, and that helps me determine how long I have to leave the chemical in the tank. It's got a single 120 spool in it right now, but it can also take 2 stainless steel 35mm spools. Also in the bottom, it tells me how much chemical I need to use. 480 cc's or 17 fluid ounces, and that allows me to pre-measure and pour so that I don't spill when I'm filling the tank. The only downside to these is that because they are so airtight, if I have the cap on, it becomes very difficult to take the top of it off because it doesn't allow any air in to release the pressure. Likewise, if I have it on, it doesn't stay down. So I've got to take the cap off to put the lid on and take the lid off. Not an inconvenience. In fact, that's a sign that it's a very high quality tank. This, I'm not sure who made it. It was made in Spain though. It's got a nice chart on the bottom that says how much fluid to use for different types of film. 127, 35, and 120. And inside, this tank, I don't like the way that the seal works on this, so I'm not particularly fond of it. But inside it takes two reels on a center column. You've probably seen this tank before. I think I've used it in a previous video. This tank is enormous. It only holds 2 rolls of film, however. You can see on the bottom it can either take 35 or 126, 127, 120, 220, and 620. That's how old this tank is. This tank is probably 30 years old, or close to it. It's a Vivitar brand tank, and it's an interesting system. It requires a lot of fluid, a lot more chemical than I would normally want to use, and it's a little bit more complicated than the rest. You can see inside there's a lot of spare space around the reels. There's a lot of chemical waste with this system, but it's a standard plastic, 2 plastic reels on a center column, and then they go in, put on the lid. And then this I actually really like. It's got these 2 notches. You might be able to see it's got a notch on each side here. On the center column there are flanges to catch these notches. You put this in, and you don't even have to rotate the tank up and down. You just spin it. And that allows the chemical to be agitated inside the film instead of rotating it. I'm going to show you the rotating process next. Here's my stainless steel tank. This is the tank that I use most often because it's frequent for me to use to develop 2 rolls of film at a time. As I mentioned in a previous video, I tend to wrap it in electrician's tape after I add the chemical. So I will add, this is my demonstrator roll. I'll put both rolls of film in here in the dark, put on the cap and the lid, and then I'll take the electrician's tape and I will run a bead around the edge to help keep the chemical in. The blue tape that you can see on the bottom, that's going to be to help you track what I'm going to be doing during the agitation. Alright. A little bit of overlap, more than I normally like to, but that's okay. So the chemical will be poured in here. With this tank, this type of tank especially, you want to hold the tank at an angle and pour the chemical in a stream like that. Otherwise, the light-proof seal binds up. The air can't get out, the fluid can't get in, and it overflows very quickly. So holding the tank at an angle is a must when it's being filled. And then towards the very end, as it fills up, you can let it lie flat, and then cap it off, fill it up to the top here. Then you put the cap on, and for the first minute, as you'll see when I actually develop film in one of these videos, you rotate it, and then every 10 seconds after the first minute. And what you want to do is rotate it 360 degrees this way and a quarter turn this way for every rotation. And here's how you do that. Put your hands like this, and as you're rotating, you do that. So watch the way that the blue tape is moving, and you can see that as I'm rotating this direction, I'm rotating on multiple axes at a time. And that's the proper way to agitate film every time it needs to be agitated. And film agitation during processing is important because it increases contrast. So if I poured the chemical in there and I shook it around a couple times and set it down, it would be less contrasty, the final product, than by agitating it properly. Also, when agitating it, it ensures that fresh chemical touches the film, which results in a higher quality, lower grain finished product on your negatives. So proper agitation, at least once a minute for 10 seconds, is very, very important to do. And properly agitating it also will give you better results. It's incredibly disappointing, as I've had happen to me on occasions, I won't admit how many, to pull film out after the wash, after the developing, and find out that it's muddy and it's gray, and it was my fault. So these are some best management practices you can use when you're developing your own film to make sure that you have the highest quality finished product possible, and that you're enjoying and getting the most out of your photography.